So this is to process the aurora using the high pass filter, but try and remove some of the problems that the high pass filter does. So the high pass filter will bring out the aurora curtains really well. It'll put artifacts around the stars and it will over sharpen and contrast the foreground. So the plan is to try and separate it into three areas really, which is stars, sky and foreground, and process those separately. The first step I'll show you on another image, then I'll carry on with Martin's. So the first step would be color correction only, and this has already been done quite well. So I'll just show you this quickly with a new image, assuming everyone's photographing in RAW.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we,
that was a question as well. When you're shooting raw on the
yeah,
Nikon, are you doing it as a NEF or shooting into a TIFF?
NEF.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a NEF, but on the back of the camera, it's very bright, so you can see everything. So this is an F. It's slightly underexposed, so I'm going to fix two things on the first pass. I'm going to fix the color temperature. So for the aurora, it's at 3500. I'm going to go into the exposure slightly and just mess around with it a bit. I'm not going to do too much with the bottom because it will start impacting the aurora at the top. Actually, there's nothing at the bottom to look at. I'll also go down to the optics and I will make sure that I've got profile correction on, remove chromatic aberration. I don't do the vignetting yet. There's some vignetting in here, but I'll fix that separately because the problem with fixing vignetting on an overall photo is that fixing the vignetting in the top of the photo will show you more aurora, but it will then make the sky glow and the light pollution at the bottom glow too much. So I'll do that separately. I'll also have a look at the detail, and I tend not to sharpen on this level. And I'd look at color noise. So that's fine. There's a little bit of noise treatment there. So that would be the first level. So high level adjustments to that, but nothing else. So I'm going to jump across to this one now, which has already been color corrected as I got it. And so we're going to separate them into, well, I'm going to adjust it first for, so I'm going to make a copy, which is Control J to make a copy, so I can always backtrack fairly easily. Go into filter, camera raw filter. And I'm just going to adjust the exposure a little bit, maybe the shadows up a little bit. That's it. Okay, so that's your base image started. I'm going to duplicate that twice and I'm going to make a star only layer. So I go into filter, noise, dust and scratches, and I'm going to find a star. I'm going to find a star first to view it on there. There we go, there's a star. If you increase the radius until that star disappears, I'm going to go up a little bit. So that is normally between 6 and 11. So we'll go to 11. That removes all the stars from that image, or most of them. And then if I change that to difference, the difference between the image with the stars and the image with only the stars, when I merge those two, so the normal copy plus the copy that we've just done set with the blending mode of difference, I end up with a stars only layer. So I'm going to call that stars, and we'll have a quick look at that in camera raw because we'll do some adjustments to that. So what I do to check the stars, and it really depends to taste on how much stars you want to show. I'll bump the exposure right up so I can see all the artifacts I want to get rid of as well and the carry throughs. So I don't need any of the base because I'm not using any of this base. I'm only using this for stars. So I'm going to brush over those. And you can be as careful as you want, but this is just a quick demo. And I'm going to bring the exposure back down, and I'm going to increase the highlights to get the stars to show. And I'm just going to drop the blacks a little bit because I suspect that there's going to be some background sounds in this, noise still in there. Okay. So I'm not sure how well this shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
I can see the stars.
Good, good. And then
Yeah.
we change the blend to screen, and now the stars are shining through, and they're only subtle because we really want to concentrate on the aurora. So we go back down to layer 1, and I want to duplicate that. So we're now going to just look at the aurora. So I want filter, other, high pass filter, and you want a decent number here on a high pass filter. So you want to be able to see the striations in the aurora. So this is sort of 500 odd, anything anywhere above 300, but you'd fiddle with it to taste. So we're just applying that high pass filter, which adds contrast. And then on the high pass filter, we change the blend mode to overlay. So you can see already the difference that that's made. That's with hiding that filter, and that's with adding that filter on. So you get a significant amount of extra detail within the aurora. The downside is, of course, it affects the whole of the image. So we might want to start messing around with the whole of the image and deciding what we want showing through. So we can do that by adding a mask, layer mask. So if you go into the square with a circle on, you've got a layer mask here. You change to a brush over here, and you want the opposite color to the mask. So we're over here, we're going to click that little button there, and it'll change it to a black brush. So everywhere on that mask you brush black will remove the effects of the high pass filter. So whether you can see or not, whether it's even working or not. And change of mode. The mode at the very top is overlay. So don't be a fool and leave it on what I did last time. So we'll have another go. So as you're brushing over here, can you see how that's getting darker again? You're removing the effects of the high pass filter. So it's not really emphasizing the light pollution. If you want to see how your mask looks, if you click on the mask and then you click Alt and the mask, you can see the mask come up as the main image. So if you want to color the bits that you've missed, then you can do that, and then just click back on the high pass filter. So now we know the high pass filter is only really working on the top. There's a couple of things I want to fix now. So I want to fix the vignetting. Don't like there's more detail in the top. So I've duplicated the layer again from underneath. I want to go into filter, camera raw filter. And just to show you the vignetting, if you go into effects, then correcting it there is overkill. So we're not trying to correct it there. That's too much. We want to go into optics, and we just want to increase the vignetting, and you'll just start to see some more color in the aurora coming up there. The byproduct, of course, is it lightens up the other corner as well. So you can see it lightens up around here, which you may not want. So that's my vignetting layer. If I don't want to use that, this isn't too bad actually, but some of the images where you've got a lot of light pollution, these areas become really bright. So again, you can apply a layer mask, make sure you're on normal mode, black brush, and then you effectively want to paint the shape of the vignetting. So what that's really doing is undoing that vignetting correction I did on the bottom and leaving it intact on the top. So if we remove that, you can see a little bit of a change in the lights on the corner there to put it back to where it was. So that's how you get the detail there. If you then want to, attacked by a creature, if you then want to adjust the background, you can do it in two ways. You can just go into the background layer, which is only really visible. You're only viewing the bottom, so you can mess around with this. And I think what I find quite well on the background layer again is duplicate that, go into it, filter, camera raw. So I duplicate every layer I'm playing with so I can turn it on and off to check and fiddle with it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mask the bottom, oh, sorry, brush the bottom, and I'm going to do sky, because I think it detects sky. I was going to say it detects sky better, but it doesn't. Right, that's it. And then we're going to invert the mask. So you're picking up the bottom. And then I'm just going to bump up the shadows a little bit in here. So that carries through. And so now you've got a separately adjusted background layer. You've got your aurora, you've got your vignetting adjustment layer there. You've got your aurora sharpening layer here. And you've got your stars layer in there. And obviously you can then adjust those to taste. One thing worth mentioning is sometimes that high pass filter can really increase the noise. So you can go into your aurora layer and really pile on the noise reduction. And so you can even go into the high pass filter and pile on the noise reduction, and it will remove all of that. This is pretty clean image anyway, so you haven't really got much to worry about. You've got to get quite close to see any of the problems. So that's your before. Oh, sorry, that's your after, and that was your before. So you can see the details that are coming out there. And again, the base is, to choice. And that's it. High pass filter on Aurora.
Blimey.
Hope this has been recorded so I can watch it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I have done, I've done some written instructions because there's a couple of things that well, you can keep fiddling forever because you're adjusting each part of it. But I've done some screenshots, so I'll just tidy that up and update it, and then I'll either put it in a OneDrive for you to link to, or you can attach it to the recording at YouTube. I'm assuming you can do that.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I'm fine in Lightroom. Not a problem in Lightroom, but Photoshop just haven't quite grasped it yet. I'm still quite a big learning curve. I can do bits and pieces, but yeah, it's a big learning curve for me, Photoshop.
Well, I think the main bit with Lightroom is that you can step back to things quite easily, and it keeps your history. With Photoshop, it's not as easy, so you lose whole steps rather than little bits.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Camera Raw is the one that you really want to use for most of your adjustments. So you duplicate layers, you play till your heart's content, and you're happy with an aspect of that image. And then if you're happy with one part and not the other, you can duplicate it, and you can use these masks to remove the bits that you don't like. And that makes a huge difference for light pollution, color grading, particularly when you've got light pollution. I did an image the other day of the aurora, and I lit up a boathouse with an LED torch. And by the time I'd color corrected it, the boathouse was fluorescent blue because it picked up the blue color of it. So of course, with masking, I could color correct just the boathouse and without interfering with the rest of the picture by two pictures, one corrected for the boat, and then just brushing using that black and white brush on the mask, revealing or concealing the bits that I want to do.
Yeah, that's the big advantage of using Photoshop, isn't it?
Yeah. And it works for astro images as well, I mean, especially the star layer, because when you've got decent stars, I mean, it's hard to do anything with stars on a wide field, but when you've got a close-up one with a telescope and you've got the stars, You can balance the star colors as well, so you can increase the yellows and color correct them properly where you can remove some of the the green casts. So you can do an awful lot with those. And I always do a lot of stuff in Photoshop, sorry, PixInsight, but I tend to export the main object and the stars as two separate layers. So I have a little bit more control over it and the brush control to do lights and darks.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, because normally when I'm finished in Lightroom, I've got Topaz, so I just pop it over to Topaz Denoise, which I think does generally a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And I don't really have to think about it too much, so I'd probably take the easy option out.
Well, I think Topaz is brilliant. I've used that for a long time and I use it on here all the time. The only thing that it doesn't do well, when you've got stars in there, it can oversharpen, even just if you just denoise, it tries to oversharpen the stars and then you end up getting an artifact round.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I separate the stars, process the aurora separately. So I do the full noise reduction on the aurora, then I put the stars back so the denoise doesn't put those artifacts in. And sometimes another tip that I use is if the stars are too sharp. So once you've taken them out, again, this isn't too bad at all, but we've got a little bit of a sharp star there. So if you go into the stars layer and you go into filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then you can move that around until you've just taken the edge off those stars.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them too much, but I don't like mine sharp on the edge, particularly if they're not perfectly round. So that to me is a little bit more appealing than that which looks a little bit over sharpened.
Yeah, I've got Sharpen, obviously part of the Topaz package, but I tend not to use it because it tends to make it look artificial a lot of the times and just doesn't do
Yeah.
a great job. So I tend not to sharpen at all, really, and just use the denoise and just make sure sharpen's turned right down. Because yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah, this still applies a level of sharp, which is why I always take the stars out.
yeah,
But that Gaussian blur can be, particularly when you're pulling stars out with Star Exterminator, sometimes you can get a really sharp edge on it, and then just fiddling with that blur can give you that little mess around just to take the edge off it. And actually, to me, it makes it look more real rather than artificially sharpened. You can also use that star technique, and you can double up on the stars. So if you keep doubling up, you can see them getting brighter. Just hitting Control J. So if you want to mess around with the stars without messing around with the backgrounds, you can just keep doing that. But it also gives you the option of using the masks and only highlighting the big stars. So for example, if you want to show a constellation in one of those, you can duplicate the layers, mask everything out, and then just brush back those constellation stars. So you can bump up the brightness of some stars only without the others, should you want to emphasize something.
Good idea.
So that's all of my little Photoshop secrets.
Very good.
Wow.
I guess obviously using Lightroom, and then if I go into Photoshop, sometimes I've never really used the camera raw filter, but you've got me thinking that's probably a better option than actually using in Lightroom.
But it's virtually the same. If I go back to that image that
Same.
I looked at, and we go into filter, camera raw, and you'll have, it's the same layer near enough as Lightroom. It hasn't got the presets. So if you use those, but you've got the same panel. So you've got your exposure panels, you've got your shadows, you've got everything else that's in there. So, you can, that's the way I tend to do. I do most of my adjustments in Camera Raw on a copy rather than on the main image.
Right, yeah, got you. Yeah.
The other thing you can do with Photoshop is you can save actions. So you can record yourself. If you're doing a time lapse and you've got like 100 images and you want to apply the same settings to all of them, you can record yourself doing one and use the action to apply it to a folder full of images, or you can just do it to a single image. So this isn't going to work because it's not set up for this image, but I'll just show you quickly what an action could do. So I set an action up for the aurora, So it's me recording myself processing a file that was like this, and then you hit play. I'm just gonna, and it carries on those different processes. So it's looking for the dust and scratch, it's removing the stars. It's removing the stars from the bottom layer. Naming it stars. I'm okay with that. So you can see this is exactly what we went through earlier. To create a bigger brush. So you can see the one I was using earlier had had a lower foreground. Hence the reason I've got to mess around with that a little bit.
How do you record that, Rob, to do an action? Sorry, just say that again when you're doing that.
There's a tab here.
Yep.
So this tab here is actions, and you go into there.
Yep.
And you do new action. And when you do new action, you call it whatever you want.
Yep.
And then as soon as you press record,
yeah,
you've got your red button there, and it's recording everything that you're doing.
Yeah, got you. Okay. Yep, yep.
But
I have really dabbled with that in the past. Yeah.
It's useful. So that moved that around from. Let me just go back to where it was. So that was the original, and that action did everything up to there.
Yeah. Okay.
So it does make it easier. And so particularly if you've got a time lapse and you're doing a number of them, you can apply actions to a folder as well.
I guess that's similar to like synchronizing in Lightroom, same principle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Super.
Any questions?
Excellent. No, that was really useful, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to have to sit and work through the YouTube a few times.